Would you like to get more involved in your local community and local politics? Let me give you a super quick tip. Welcome back to another episode of T-Rex Talk. This may actually be a fairly short episode because all I'm going to do is tell you about something that I did last night. I've gotten a lot of questions as we've talked about building community, getting plugged into your local community, and getting involved with your local state level reps and your local politicians so that you can be aware of who to support, who to vote for, and what sort of political change is possible. I've gotten a lot of requests from people asking just kind of practically, how do you do that? And it's a little bit hard to give advice there sometimes because every location is a little different. I'm extremely familiar with how to do this in Middle Tennessee. Well, sort of. I'm very familiar with how to do this inside of Centerville, Tennessee. And then there's other places where I've lived where I never actually learned how to do this. When I lived in San Antonio, I knew a little bit about the political stuff that was going on, but it wasn't like I was regularly running into the Castro brothers or any of the other movers and shakers on a regular basis. And I didn't go to their big fundraisers because it was like $10,000 a plate, and I didn't really know how to get plugged in with those folks. Now, I did end up randomly, somewhat, getting plugged in with a bunch of folks on the Republican side. Big surprise. I had more connections on the conservative side of the fence than the liberal one. But the smaller your actual pre-existing local community is, the easier it is to get plugged in. You just have to do a little bit of work on Google and Facebook to figure it out. So, last night I went to a political fundraiser for Jody Barrett. There's really no reason to mention Jody Barrett except that you know that I live in Centerville, Tennessee, so you can figure out whose district I'm in, so you can figure out who our local rep is. Jody Barrett was elected to the Tennessee House of Representatives the last election. So he's had one general session, he's had one special session, which we've talked about on the podcast before, and he's getting ready for general session in a couple of months, which means that he has a little window as he's getting ready to go to session where he is A, fundraising for an upcoming election, and B, talking to people about their political priorities. He's actually going out and talking to the folks in his district that he represents about how to represent them. And so last night I went to his fundraiser. I'm just going to tell you what that looked like. It was outdoors. There were probably about 30 people there, and I got to talk to most of them. Now, to be honest, it was extremely last minute. I knew that the fundraiser was happening, but I'd had an incredibly long day and a very long week, and I thought that I had something else booked for the evening. So I wasn't planning on going. I thought that I would try to go to the fundraiser that was going to be on Tuesday. By the way, I'm going to mention that again later. But my evening cleared up, and I thought to myself, let's just get this out of the way now, because I'm already kind of exhausted, and let's just do it. And to be honest, it was actually super fun to see everybody and to talk about stuff and get some bigger context. T-Rex had a very focused week on specific things, and then we had an extremely focused couple of days. And it was fun to talk to other people about much wider scope of things. And when you go to some of these small town community fundraisers, who you will run into are the people who are already plugged into the system. So the mayor was there. Our local Republican Party guy was there. A whole bunch of other people who are doing really interesting things are there. And these are people who, if you want to get plugged into your local community and you want to build community, these are the guys that you want to get to know. And most of these guys are older. They have fascinating stories, and they're just really good to talk to. So I was talking to a guy who had been stationed in Germany during the Cold War, and he had some very interesting stories about watching the wall come down and being on both sides of that border at different times and what it felt like and what it looked like. If you're in DC or inside some massive city, the political fundraisers are these dull, boring affairs where people who only care about politics show up, and the bright young things that are going to be the movers and shakers are there, and they come and go, and it's really hard to get to know anyone. But once you get out into the small towns, you get people who really genuinely care, which sounds, cheesy and schmaltzy and Mr. Smith goes to Washington, but it's actually true. The people who really care about the direction of the country and they really care about their neighbors do show up at these kind of political action events, and they're cool to talk to. People who are older and have been doing this for some time and have a lot of wisdom about how such and such works. People who have known each other for a long time. People who have been doing interesting stuff for a long time. And people who are engaged in business. I got a little bit of insight into how things are going at Barrett, the rifle manufacturing company. If you're not aware, Barrett was purchased by an Australian company, I guess it was about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, and got to hear how that transition has gone, apparently very well. So in some of these events, you're going to be more likely to run into people who are actively doing stuff, and that was fun. So my recommendation to you is to look around your area. You cannot afford to go to presidential fundraising dinners, probably, if you're listening to this podcast. But you can afford to go to some of your local fundraisers. So what Jody Barrett was asking was recommended $150 donation to come and eat food and talk to folks at his fundraiser. And I don't actually know how many people gave that full suggested recommended amount. Nobody was really counting. Like, it wasn't like you were buying tickets. So if you are in a small town, a small district, small county, small community, and you want to get more plugged in and get to know folks and just really understand better what is going on in your community, I think that these political fundraisers offer you tremendous bang for your buck. Not just, the dollars, but you will have conversations with folks who are good networkers. You will have conversations with folks who are doing things. You will have conversations that are just more productive and interesting and helpful than when you just randomly meet people on the street. Now, you should totally be randomly meeting people on the street and having conversations with them. But this was a really pleasant evening, and it was really encouraging to get a little bit of a wider perspective on what's going on in the community after a couple of days of being incredibly focused on very specific things, kind of like a breath of fresh air, and to catch up with a bunch of people that I have now known for over a decade and seen occasionally at events like these. And that ongoing track record is another really important thing that you need to be doing as you build community or as you try to be a part of an existing community. That cannot be overstated. So if your plan is to get more involved in political stuff or business stuff or community stuff in 5 or 10 years, start 5 years ago. Because good relationships do take time to build. And I really appreciate that I've been having conversations with Dusty Jordan for over 10 years now. And now when I see him and I talk about stuff, I know him better, he knows me better, and yeah, it's just a better conversation. I get more out of it. And I think maybe he does too. And since we're talking about politics, that track record is incredibly important for politicians. Politicians often look like they come out of nowhere. And, sometimes they actually do. But you need to be able to figure out whether or not you can support somebody based on their track record, not necessarily based on their campaign promises. So the other interesting thing about this particular event for Jody Barrett was that it was sort of being put on by John Rich. John Rich is a pretty big deal in the country music scene. Now, despite living in Tennessee, I'm not part of the country music scene, so I don't really know how big a deal John Rich is. You may not know how big a deal John Rich is, but he's kind of a big deal. When Donald Trump was elected president, John Rich did not play at the inauguration, but he did play at the pre-inauguration party. And he also played at this little 35 person Jody Barrett fundraiser. Now, if you want to be cynical, you would say, who is this mysterious Jody Barrett character that has come out of nowhere, and why are big-time country music celebrities supporting him? Is this some sort of deep state conspiracy theory? But the answer is, I really don't think so. Turns out, and John Rich told this story, when he was a teenager and his parents divorced, he found himself in Dickson County, Tennessee, going to Dickson High School. And he made friends with Jody Barrett. And because it was, something of a difficult change in his life, he spent a lot of time with Jody Barrett and even staying at Jody Barrett's house during that period. And they have stayed in touch over the many, many years since. Again, this is sort of a schmaltzy Jimmy Stewart kind of story that you would expect from a political movie in the 40s or the 50s. But these kind of actual human relationships are real, and we shouldn't just assume that they're manufactured when we hear about them. Anyway, as the two stayed in touch, Jody Barrett started to say, hey, I think that one of the best things that I could do is get involved in politics, because I don't really think that any of the people representing our district are doing a very good job. And John Rich said, hey, if you do it, I promise I will show up and sing at your events. Which is how he found himself at this little 30-person gig at the Centerville War Memorial. So absolutely figure out where these small politicians are coming from rather than just getting involved in elections at the national level. If you follow black-pilled meme pages on the internet, you know that the slogan is that voting doesn't change anything. And I would kind of agree. Blind voting for people that you don't know simply because they have the right letter next to their name does nothing. But getting to know local representatives and being there to support them and knowing whether or not you should support them long term is something that does accomplish something. I've been very impressed with some of the stuff that Jody Barrett has already done in the single session that he has been a part of. And I voted for him, and I'm going to vote for him again. And the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you to his next fundraiser this Tuesday, if you happen to be near the town of Dickson. Now, I'm not inviting you because I'm trying to fundraise for him. I'm inviting you because if you are interested in learning how to get plugged into local politics and see how local community stuff works, this thing is a fantastic opportunity, and I'm actually going again on Tuesday. So it's going to be, I guess I'll put the link in the description below. It's going to be at the Greystone Golf Club in Dickson, Tennessee, Tuesday, November 7th. And it will start at 5:30. John Rich will be there. He will probably play some songs. Jody Barrett will be there, and you will almost certainly get to talk to him in person. And I will be there too. Looking forward to getting to meet some of the Dickson folks. And in this case, it will be some people that I definitely don't know. I haven't done a whole lot of stuff outside of Centerville and Nashville. So this will be a good opportunity for me to meet some new folks. And if you come along, you'll probably get to meet some new folks too. So if you live near Dickson, Tennessee, come along. And if you live near some other town, definitely have a look around. Right now is prime time fundraising season for politicians. And I'm not saying that you should be donating heavily to people that you haven't gotten to know yet, but showing up at some of their dinners is a great way to get to know them and their friends and the other people in your community. So don't look down your nose at it, even though I really think that campaign finance reform is kind of a major deal that we should be talking about. Ignore for a moment the political donation thing and the huge can of worms that is. I am recommending that you talk face-to-face with the people who are getting involved in your local community, and this is just a really super easy, practical, simple way to do it. Maybe I will see you on Tuesday. If not, I hope that you do get plugged in to the folks in your area.